Okay.
She didn't know this was a feature.
Yeah, I think this is the first time we've been using it for this event, which is nice because it works pretty well.
Nice, yeah.
All right, I'm gonna send it out to Summer Hacks.
How many of these fireside chats have you done?
I've done a couple, but so we kind of split up who goes to each one. So I haven't been to every single one.
Okay.
Give me one second. All right. All right, we'll give people a couple minutes to hop in. I'll mute the tab. To each one, so I haven't been to it. Okay. Sweet. I've prepared like a handful of questions, and I'm just hoping that like whatever you say will spark other questions, and we can just go off from there.
Sure. Yeah.
We can avoid dead air. All right, so I'll just give people a handful of minutes to hop in because.
Sure.
And I'll also be monitoring the chat, and then if people throw questions in there, I will direct them to you as appropriate.
Yeah, is there a chat I can take a look at too?
Yeah, let me send you that. I sent you the link in the Zoom chat.
Oh, it's just like the YouTube thing.
Give people a handful of minutes.
Nice.
So
I remember in college, one of my friends, when Facebook Live first turned on, like the Facebook Live feature.
Yeah.
One of my friends, they did something kind of funny. They like just did homework and live streamed themselves doing their homework.
People live stream the randomest stuff. I like. This wasn't even live streaming, but back like in the early, I saw this blog post about it. People just live streamed like their fish swimming around in like the globe or whatever, just like the dumbest things, and people watched it. Like people actually tuned in.
All right, what is the funniest thing we could live stream? Like live stream me eating. Like that's like that's a demographic for this live stream, right? People that like to watch people eat. Like that's why Bone Epic eat. Or no, Epic Meal Time. Epic Meal people love Meal Time.
But that's mainstream. Like that's on YouTube. You can just watch it and people see people eat, right?
What is the most watch me read? Live stream me reading?
That would be watch you code, but they can't see the screen. They just see you sitting there.
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly. Like, no picture in picture or anything.
No, just you. The worst YouTube video ever.
Watch me react to this reaction video. That's a good one. Yeah.
Oh, but I've seen people do that too. Like Cody Code has reactions to reactions, right? Like a whole YouTube thing.
There is interesting to me that watching people live code is like, it's like a thing. Like, remember George? Do you know George Kotz, the jailbreak guy?
No, I don't.
He's kind of great. George Kotz, he like got in trouble when he was 16 for jailbreaking the iPhone, and then he jailbroke the PlayStation. And
actually, he's the one who got in trouble with Sony, right?
Yeah,
and now I've heard of him. Yeah,
has like a self-driving car company called.
Yeah. Yes, I've seen him. I've seen his YouTube stuff.
And do you see South by Southwest talk jailbreaking the simulation?
Yeah.
Honestly, like it's crazy. It's like a cult, but I watched it and like honestly, I would join it. He's like very captivating, but it's ridiculous.
I remember stumbling on his like what was his Wikipedia page a while ago, and I was like, "Well, this guy." Like, because he got in trouble at like 16, and then throughout like in college, he was just like messing with Sony and stuff. That's insane.
Yeah. But he also like I remember live streamed himself writing like a visual slam package like in over 16 hours in one sitting, and then he like open sourced it, and that was it. And then he like in the README of the GitHub repo, you see the link to the live stream. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, I'm sure people watch too. Incredible stuff. All right. If people show up, they will show up. Otherwise, we have a lot of people watch after the fact when we post this on our channel. So we'll do that.
Sure.
But people usually will show up in a couple minutes and or watch it later. So it should be all good. All right. To our viewers at home, thank you all for coming. This is Sean Kirmani. He's a UT alum and a current engineer working at Google X in California. I'll let Sean introduce himself. Sean?
Sure. Yeah, so I was an electrical engineering and computer science student at UT from 2013 to 2018. Um, Before that, I grew up in Las Vegas. I was born in Los Angeles. And I now live in San Francisco, California. I interned at Google 3 times. So the first time was after my sophomore year of college. I worked on Google Chrome. Then after that, I went back to Google again, working on this thing called Project Tango. You probably have not heard of it, but it was like this augmented reality thing. It's had like depth sensors and had like a different hardware than a normal phone. And that's kind of what AR Core is, which is like the AR libraries for Android today. And then I interned at Google X Robotics on the project, and I'm back full time on this project. I've been working on there for 2 years. It's called the Everyday Robot Project. You can look it up. There's some articles, or there's a Google X page about it. And we're trying to make robots that help people in everyday situations. They're mostly indoor robots. It's a mobile manipulator. There's some cool videos. You can check them out.
And we'll link some stuff in the description too, in case you guys want to take a look. And for those of you who might not know, Google X is Google's semi-secret research lab where they work on moonshot ideas that have potential to change the world in the future. Just in case some of you might not have known, I save you that Google. All right, so Sean, right at the beginning, let's talk about how you got into robotics and what actually drove you to start working in this field, if you don't mind.
Sure. I guess like when I was in high school, I applied to be a film major at half the colleges I applied to, and then like a computer science major at half the colleges I applied to. And I think with UT, it was like first choice like RTF, second choice computer science. And I actually spent my first semester at UT Dallas, and then I transferred after like 3 months. I really like remember it actually. And I was actually got in like undeclared like to UT, and I was math and I think I immediately, like before college of natural science wasn't closed down. So I was like math and computer science at the time. And at some point, for some reason, I don't know when it happened, I just like didn't want to do film anymore. And after that, I tried to switch into CS, and they like closed down the college a bit, and I did not get in. And I ended up getting into electrical engineering. I was working with the professor in the E department. His name was Sriram Vishwanath. I tried to get involved in research. For when I started school, I just, for some reason was obsessed with getting a PhD. For some reason, no offense to anyone that's still interested in getting a PhD. And I posted in like the UTCS Facebook group, just saying, how do I get involved in research? And there's this grad student that like pinged me, and he was like, just meet me at this lab at this time, we can talk. And then I talked with him, and I thought it was research, but it was actually a startup he was doing with this professor. And I guess like because he had a couple startups with like many like undergrads at UT, and because of that, I got into electrical engineering through Shriram. He like helped me, and then I started for my sophomore year. I was an electrical engineering major, and I liked hardware more than I realized. Like I think there's like the classic meme when you're like a undergrad that like computer science is like high level and like electrical engineering is low level. And my first job was like a web development job between high school and college. And like I was like, oh, it's nice working at high level. I don't like thinking about like low level stuff that's like too hard. But when I started in electrical engineering, I actually intended to like switch majors. Like I was fully intent on like dropping it, applying again to computer science. And I liked it more than I thought. There was this class called like, you take it your second semester in electrical engineering called Intro to Embedded Systems. And I liked it more than I realized I would. And I did find a research lab also like this year in the end. It was working with Dr. Ghosh for about 1.5 years. And it was actually pretty, and they got this grant for the Texas Department of Transportation on like distributed autonomous vehicles and like how you can do crash risk detection with that. Mm-hmm. And that was like the first time I ended up working in like machine learning and learning any of like these like clustering algorithms and trajectory prediction. It was kind of fun. I remember like this is before like TensorFlow was like a thing. So like I got like thrown like a textbook. I think I still have a precocious textbook somewhere in my apartment that like had like it was called like top 10 algorithms in data science, and like a neural net was like such like a buzzwordy thing, and I didn't really know what it was. And so I like tried writing like my own like Python library, and I used that for like a bunch of projects. So now that TensorFlow exists, it's so much easier. And I did it like in a not great way, looking back at it. And yeah, after that, I did go to Google that summer after that for the first time on Chrome. And during that internship is when I got into computer science, and I made the choice to keep electrical engineering as a major and not to drop it. And that's how I ended up being an electrical engineering computer science major. And during that summer, I think there was a realization I had during that internship where I was like, all right, this is cool. Like I got like one of those internships with like the big companies, that the FANG companies that everyone likes to go to. And I was thinking, now I should really think about like what I want to do specifically. And I think that's when I like started to try things. I actually was really interested in VR because one of my friends, he worked on maps, and he gave me like a cardboard, one of the Google cardboard things. And I thought it was super cool. And I just like even my siblings came. They were like 7-9 years younger than me, and they were like, "This is sick." And I guess like the mindset I had is like, "All right, this is going to be huge, like because if kids like it, they're going to grow up, and then it's just going to be a big thing."
Yeah.
It's 2015, and we don't have VR still. So
soon.
One day. It's always 18 months away.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's when I just honestly one of the best pieces of advice I got was like just contact people, like I cold contacted like so many people on VR and AR. Tango, I ended up meeting the guy for like lunch before that I ended up working for the following year. Like a bunch of people on Google Robotics on the project that I'm now on, but I didn't know about the project at the time. That was 5 years ago. Yeah. And I think he's actually now in Austin at another robotics company, the guy I met. And yeah, the cold contacting people, like you'd be surprised, in the same way that you just contacted me saying, will you talk about yourself? People love to talk about themselves. Yeah. And I'm doing that exactly right now.
Yeah.
And that's when I went back to school. Scott Neekum just started his professorship. He was like a very like energetic professor with lots of ideas and no money because he just started his professorship. He was still like applying for grants at the time. And I feel like I worked a lot with him. And that's when I kind of thought robotics was what I wanted to do, because it was like I was trying to find like, all right, I think I liked the data mining stuff I was doing with Ghosh. We were very disconnected from the hardware. And then working with like robotics the first time I was in Scott Neekum's lab. I took Vuga's computer graphics lab class the semester before I ended up interning at Tango, and I worked on image-based relighting. There's like a blog post about it, which was like how you do environmental lighting for augmented reality objects, so that like if you turn the lights off in your room, the lighting of the object would also get darker. Yeah, that's the idea. And then I switched from Dr. Ush's lab to Scott's lab too that same semester, and I worked on like this LFD thing with like an AR controller. And I worked on Tango for that summer. I asked him, he worked at this company called Willow Garage that made ROS and like OpenCV and PCL before they got, and he introduced me to people that worked at X. And then Andrea Tomaz is also a professor, and one of her grad students also worked at X on human-robot interaction. And I got really interested in that. So I was kind of, Scott and Andrea's lab before the new electrical engineering building was built was in the same room. So there was like a lot more collaboration there. Yeah. And I kind of like ended up working with Andrea a little bit more. And like, that's when I got deeper into robotics, and I went back to X and I interned on perception for HRI. I took Kristen Grauman's computer vision class. That was like one of, if I was gonna like pick favorite classes in college, Kristen Grauman's computer vision class, Vuga's physical simulation and graphics classes, and Scott Neekham's graduate robot learning classes are probably one of my favorite classes I took at UT. They're all like graphics vision and robotics classes.
Yeah.
I did that internship. We did some perception engagement detection for people, and I came back full time and I worked on trackers and detectors and classifiers and LiDARs and point clouds and VQA and all these different things for our robots since then. But yeah, honestly, it's so gradual. And I don't make movies. That was my alternate. I wanted to, like a sketch comedian, comedy writer for SNL was the dream.
So that's funny. I'm actually going to ask you, if you weren't working with robots, what would you want to do? What would you be doing with your life?
Oh no, yeah, I would just be a sketch comedy writer.
Okay.
Instead, I'm just a funny engineer now. So.
One day we'll see your sketches on SNL.
One day, yeah.
One day. All right. Can you tell us what a typical day in the life at X is like? What does your day pre-pandemic, I guess, look like?
Despite being called the Moonshot Factory, it probably feels more like any other engineering organization.
Right.
Like most of my day, I can pull up my calendar. Today was actually a very productive programming day because Wednesdays are no meeting days. But honestly, days are probably roughly 40% meetings. What's different at machine learning in industry than machine learning in academia is you don't train a model once. I was just talking to someone about this, how you don't have a static data set. Data sets are constantly growing as you're collecting more data and you're retraining every day and auto deploying. So usually one of the first things I do is I check like the latest models that were trained.
Yeah.
And like we train many simultaneously for like detection and classification and RGBD cameras and LiDARs. And then I go to meetings, I respond to emails, I review code, you write code. It's very standard. I would say that in the big picture, the X projects are a little bit more ambitious because in the end, this day-to-day work is like trying to make like a robot that does a bunch of indoor tasks. Like we've done trash sorting and like sorting recycling from compost from landfill and like a bunch of other things. And we're still working on other things too. But like, but the day-to-day is surprisingly similar to other engineering organizations. Like whether you're working at like AWS on cloud, I'm sure you're also like responding to emails, reviewing code, and like checking your jobs or whatever, making sure your emails got sent out, stuff like that.
All right, that's fair. I guess another kind of tangentially related question: how do you think this whole pandemic, the work from home situation, is going to affect robotics work specifically in the future? How do you think that's going to evolve as with?
That's a good question. I actually do have an opinion on this. I guess, so broadly, the way I've looked at least indoor robotics, because like outdoor robotics is a whole different thing when you think of like self-driving cars and trucking and drone delivery. But at least with indoor robotics, there's roughly 3 broad categories of tasks that people like to do. Delivery of items, like grab me the keys from the counter, grab something from point A and bring it to me, or take something from me and put it somewhere else.
Right. So
transportation of things. Food preparation. That's like a very economical task that people like to have done. An example I've heard is like cookie dough scooping is like something that like bakeries will have like lots of people like put on the trays. And like sometimes like people doing 24-hour shifts depending on how many cookies they're making. And like people get carpal tunnel and they went to culinary school and they don't want to just like scoop cookie dough for this long, and that's like a very automatable task. And cleaning, which is like anything to do with like sanitization, like toilet cleaning, door handles, like sanitization is like actually one of those popular things. So I would say COVID is actually creating a huge increase in demand in like that cleaning category. There's an article in the New York Times just in the past week about robots that are doing like sanitization. Like Amazon and Whole Foods has like, Amazon Robotics have like giant like Kivas. Kivas are like the robots that they use for like picking up the shelves that you see in warehouses. And they just put like a door of UV lights that's just driving down the grocery aisle and like shining UV lights on the fruit. And it's other things that people have done is air quality monitoring. Like you can measure like how, like your particulates in the air and like how clean it is.
Yeah.
Like wiping, busing. Like people like to bus tables. An interesting thing, one of the more clever things I've seen is people use skeletal trackers, and they will, like when you have like the pose estimators, like in the Xbox Kinect, you know the surfaces and you know where your hand is, and you can actually like put your hand on like a surface and like mark all the things where the hand is near. Like if you were to say like in like some radius, so you can actually like know the parts of counters and surfaces that have been touched the most.
Oh, that's cool.
And like you can do this with just cameras, but you can also like have a robot then go in and like clean these things. And that's something I saw that was like actually very cool. That was like a very clever use of pose estimation, which I never thought of.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think robots are. It's a good time for robots right now. Like people really want like non-human in the loop cleaning.
Yeah. Actually, what you just talked about reminded me of this company I saw a while back. They're at a couple college campuses that automate food delivery. They just have little robots that drive around wherever students are on campus and kind of deliver food to them.
Are you talking about Kiwi? Have you heard of Kiwi?
I have, but it's a Starship XYZ.
Oh, I know Starship. Yeah, Kiwi was funny. There's the one at Berkeley that caught fire and like it was very sad. And then the next day they held a candlelit vigil for the Kiwi. Yeah.
I mean, they're going to be humanoid at some point. They're going to be indistinguishable. So.
Oh yeah, no, people like to empathize with these. They anthropomorphize robots.
Absolutely. All right. On I guess a little bit more lighthearted note, if you could have dinner with one guest, past, present, future, who would you want it to be and why?
Probably my dad.
Okay.
Easy enough. Like it doesn't need to be special. Yeah.
Yep. I guess that might also tie into this next question. Who would you say your role model is in life, both in your personal life and professional life?
Yeah, I would joke that my dad is my professional role model, but my dad is an eye surgeon, so one of my jokes is that I do robot vision and he does human vision.
Same thing.
But I think I will point to a very specific mentor that like has been a huge influence in my life. No one will know who he is, but his name is Michael Quinlan. He was a UT postdoc, the FRI, like Freshman Research Initiative, for 4 years from I think 2008 to 2012. He was a what was it, the teacher, but it's not like he wasn't the professor. He was like the postdoc running the FRI for the autonomous robot stuff back at UT with Peter Stone. And he's been like one of the biggest like mentors in like my life and my career. I was his intern at X in 2017, and I've been working with him ever since. And he's always been like a guiding force and someone that's very humorous to be around and also very hardworking. Like I think he's very practical. So would highly recommend his work.
Okay. So I guess it sounds like you would think it's important for college students, to find mentors in their professional lives. How would you say they should go around doing that?
Yeah, that's probably the most important thing that in my life, at least, has been like finding good mentors. And there's never one mentor. Like I'm picking Michael just because I've worked with him so closely lately. But like at UT, like Scott Neekum was like a huge influence. Like I might not be a roboticist if it wasn't for him. He was just so excited. I was so energized. I was still trying to figure out what I want to do with my life. Like part of it is like the time that I met him. I was like 20 years old, and like I was actively left the internship being like, oh, I should think about what I want to do. And so I met him. He just started his professorship right then, so that might have been a coincidence too. But yeah, no, you find mentors in interesting ways. Like sometimes they just show up, but sometimes you're looking for it. It's like when you're seeking something and to learn something, and that's how we find mentors. And I would definitely recommend, more than a mentor, I guess there's an aspect of they're a coach for you, is the more appropriate word. They like sponsor you. they
Mhm.
support you.
Cool. It's good advice actually for everyone. I guess at most stages of their career. So, what would you say your favorite part is about working at X on these big moonshot ideas?
So it's hard to pick a singular favorite thing.
A couple favorite.
Definitely. So in any organization or any institution that you're in, you end up starting to conform to the, I guess, institution and the incentives and the culture of it. Like in the way when you're in school, like grades are something you care about. And in academic organizations like be it PhDs or go to Microsoft Research or Google Research, they optimize for like novelty.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that X as a culture optimizes for is landing things in like the real world. There's a real world impact, like,
Yeah.
and that's something that I think I would say is one of the best things I've gotten from the organization is this making contact with the real world. And these are research projects like self-driving cars and drone delivery. Like there's, I forgot her name, but she was one of the founders of X. And but she like describes like this valley of death for projects between research and like application and industry. And like there's so many ideas that like either they don't get tried or the research is like no one ever there's an area between research and application that X occupies. That's kind of like bridging the gap between like the 20 years of autonomous car research to making like the first self-driving car. That's the kind of projects that people work on here. And the timelines are very generous. Like I think if you work at like a startup, like the typical venture capital, like you plan given maybe like a 2 to 4 year runway. I do think that like there is like X has this like luxury where they plan for like a 7 to 10 year like timeline for these projects. Like no, it would be very hard to fund a self-driving car company in 2008 as a startup. But I guess like X had that option, which is kind of interesting. Sebastian Thrun had like a big influence on that. I think Sebastian himself was like a very interesting character.
Interesting. Okay. It's good to know. What would you say are some of the biggest challenges we have that prevent us from having these fully functional robots next week? What are some of the big challenges still specifically for everyday robots?
So I have maybe a controversial answer that I don't think that there's any singular breakthrough. Like I think if you were to use self-driving cars as like an analogy, there is self-driving car companies started to pop up like 5 years ago is when Apple started their project and Cruise was founded and a lot of self-driving trucking companies. But there's no singular breakthrough that has made self-driving cars better. To some extent, I think it's more of an infrastructure problem. And I would say that's true. And when you say there's like a core belief that I have that everything that can be automated will be automated.
Okay.
Like in the sense that like, I don't know, there's certain dumb ideas that I have where I see like someone pushing a stroller and I'm like, why do you need to push that? Like that's not reason. Exactly. And like that's somewhat true with like grocery carts can like probably pick up their own groceries. There's like a future where there's like autonomous cars driving around, like delivering goods, like for like trucking and like for delivering people. And a lot of it has less to do with any particular specific like breakthrough in robotics. But I guess I do really believe that a lot of it is like underinvested infrastructure.
Right.
I think that's actually like one of the biggest hurdles. Cost is a very practical one. Like I think the cost of over the past 10 years, like if you were to buy like a LiDAR or a robot arm, they were on the order of like 5-digit numbers costs in US dollars, sometimes 6 digits. Like the PR2 from Willow Garage was like $100,000 BOM cost. And I think you can get mobile manipulators today for like much cheaper. Spot Mini has like is a highly actuated robot. So that's like a, and they're selling that for $75,000, which is like very impressive. There's a company, Hello Robot, that I forgot exactly the cost of their robot. But they have a very, very cheap robot. It's very exciting. It's like Aaron Edzinger's company, his new one. He founded Mecha Robotics before it got acquired by Google. That one was like very surprisingly cheap. Like the cost of robots is like getting so much lower.
Yeah.
Big part because the cost of sensors are getting lower. And a story that someone told me about Project Wing is that one of the big breakthroughs that they had was they got the cost of those drones from $20,000 down to like $1,000, and then they could just like crash them and iterate.
Yeah.
Like just made it so much easier.
Yeah. Okay. That's good to know. All right. I also want to leave some time at the end for, I guess, just more getting to know you questions. So before we hop into that, do you have any, I guess, resources or tips for our hackers if they want to get into robotics, ML in general?
Well, at least robotics is one of those things that like the barrier to entry is higher than like a standard, like getting into web development, getting into app development. That was like a thing that like I did in high school, and a lot of people did in high school. Like the first time I really programmed was like I made websites. It was easy to share with people.
Yeah.
Hardware is like a legitimate like cost. Like this is kind of what I'm talking about. Is like one of the, I guess, like the breakthroughs of like the iPhone is like how cheap it was and how to make it ubiquitous. A lot of people need to have them, I feel like. And I think at UT there are labs to get involved in. I would research, and there's a lot of schools that don't have robotics labs. Like that's like honestly like a kind of a inequity and like structural disadvantage that like if you go to like a university, like I grew up in Las Vegas, the local university, UNLV, does not have a robotics, anyone doing research there. So if you're a computer science student there, you have no way of even going down like a career path in robotics. I don't think I would have, if I didn't like accidentally, like, because I wasn't interested in robotics in high school. I would say an alternate way to get into robotics is via high school. There is FIRST Robotics. That's what a lot of people did. Did you do it yourself?
No, I did not do it.
I see. Yeah, I did not either. It's actually more mechanical engineering focused. I like went to like volunteer for like a team, and I realized like I am not helpful. You know how to build things like drills and like your hands. But yeah, I think UT like actually has robotics faculty. There's like a lot of faculty there. Like Mitch Pryor's group, and Andrew Tomaso, Scott Meekum, Peter Stone. Peter Stone's probably like one of the most renowned roboticists in the field. Like you can even build your own robot. Like that's like where there's a barrier for people that want to get into it. There are turtle bots that people make, the Robot 3, where you can make like a mobile base. You can even build an arm for like $1,000. But like these are like not cheap. You have to actually, it's kind of hard to dabble, I would say. Like, these are real hardware projects, and you have to already be into robots to want to spend $1,000 making a robot arm, a tiny $4 arm. So if you're just interested in it, some people might be hesitant to jump in. So the labs are honestly like one of the best ways to get into it. As far as ML, there's actually a lot of research. It's a lot easier to get into ML now than when I started school. Like TensorFlow did not exist till like halfway through my college. I think PyTorch is all the rage now, from what people tell me. JAX and all these other auto differentiation languages. It's at least for deep learning, it's so much easier. There's also like other things you can do. There's so many side projects that you can do without a robot for ML, but like in public data sets. If at the least, if you want to get into robotics, buy a 3D camera. Buy like a Kinect or RealSense or like one of those LiDARs. Because you can do a lot of interesting stuff with sensing for much cheaper than you can without the motors required to make a robot.
Okay. All right, we have a really good question in the chat. I'm just going to read that out to you. Didi asks, what do you think the biggest ethical issues with robots are and will be in the future? And what do you think could be done about these problems?
That's a good question. So there are 3 or 4, I think, dimensions that you can think about, like robotics and like society and like humanities. There are the economic impacts of robotics. There are philosophical impacts of robotics. There is labor union impacts of robotics.
Yeah.
And then there is, I guess, like other social factors, like with ethics, when you think about robotics taking care of like the elderly. If you had, and I think one I think a lot about is the labor part is like when I think of the most philosophy one I won't touch. So I have talked with a philosopher and they're kind of fun to talk with. Like they have very interesting views. But like the labor part is actually one of the things that I think is very pertinent to me. It just seems.
Yeah.
So I guess one of the people always talk about like automating people out of jobs, and like there's like this concept of like worker retraining. And I guess like one of the views that I have started to gain like more and more is that you don't automate jobs, you automate tasks. Like the cookie dough scooping example from earlier is a task that is drudgery and people don't want to do. And so things that people would rather like open up for more creativity and like actually like cooking. Like these people went to culinary school and they don't want to scoop cookie dough. And I kind of feel similar with the case of trash sorting. No person actually, that is not like a, at least at the source, there's like at the source and at the destination level streaming. And destination level streaming is like at a plant, which is already actually highly automated. Like Amp Robotics is a company that like does robotic trash sorting at the destination. But source level automation, no one, when you goes around trash cans in the front, and they often just throw these away. Like I'd actually like if you have contaminated trash, they'll like kind of just eyeball it, and if it looks like that there's like a bunch of missorted trash, they'll throw it in a landfill, and if you don't throw it in a landfill, you actually get fined because you've like polluted like recycling or compost or something.
Okay.
But this is like that's a case where you can only help with robotics. So I think you have to pick and choose what tasks you do. There are like Walmart has like 106 employees in every store. And I think they're a little bit infamous for going to many robotics companies and saying like, if you could reduce this to a smaller number, like that makes us very happy. And I think you do want to actually pick and choose your projects that you're actually helping, and not explicitly trying to just like cut costs. But I do think that there's like an ethical responsibility for robotics to pick and choose what battles they fight. You can't really live in a vacuum and say like it's always going to be better, because there are like actual cases that like I don't think I would want like a robot taking care of like a family member with dementia. Like I don't think that's like actually what I want to do.
All right. We will have to schedule maybe a different call or a different session where you can just expand on the philosophical issues with robotics, because I'm interested to hear whatever you have to say about that. So we'll have to do that. All right. No other issues in the chat. I guess we can talk more about just you and how. So where do you see yourself in, I guess, 10 years? I guess this might be a little difficult to answer because you're not that much older than any of us, but.
No, not really. And like 10 years, if I was think where I was 10 years ago, I was making sketch comedy videos and so if you asked me where I was, if you asked me a year ago where I'd be in a year, I would not say quarantined.
No one would. I guess just less than 10 years. What are kind of the goals you have for the future, professionally, personally, whatever?
I just take it day by day. Like it's a tough answer.
Yeah, no, that's.
I can't think farther than.
I kind of threw that question at you. That was unfair. I apologize. All right. I guess more lighthearted. What do you do for fun in your free time? What are kind of your hobbies?
Oh man, I have a tennis match going on my TV on the side that I've been watching. I do like to play tennis. Photography, um, normal circumstances, there are like stand-up comedy like shows. I guess they're virtual ones now. I haven't been to any of those. Concerts, they also have virtual concerts. Um, yeah, everyone's been getting into cooking. That's like a popular one. I have 4 plants. They're named. I forgot the names, but they're named.
Your name. That's all we need to know.
Yeah.
Do you perform stand-up comedy, or do you just enjoy watching?
No, I'm just funny. I did. I know. Really, pretty much no. I took a year of. Well, I guess one of the things I liked the most in school was in high school. I don't know how common of a feeling this is. Tell me if you felt similar. Um, I really did not care about my non-STEM classes at all. I did not. I hated my English class. I hated my history classes. I had no interest. I would code in my government class because I just
100%. Yeah.
And looking back on it, I think that was like a huge mistake. Like I think that like when I went to college and I was only taking like classes in a main major, my favorite classes were like I took a year of like art history and a year of theater. And the year of theater is when I did a tiny stand-up bit. I had a type 5 for that class, but I would never do that again.
Fair enough. No, I relate with you completely on the focusing on STEM classes, and I also agree that that is something I wish I wouldn't have done back in the past. So,
Yeah. Sorry.
oh, we have another fun question in the chat. Sean, what's your favorite color?
There's some sirens outside my window, so I muted myself for a bit.
Okay.
I have a blue.
Blue.
Safe, neutral.
Safe. Yep.
Yeah. You have the most blue cones in your eyes, so it's like
I see you have a scientific basis.
Represented. I can be any kind of blue. It doesn't matter where in this blue spectrum the one is.
Any kind of blue. Okay, yeah. Fair enough. Ansh, I hope that answers your question. What are you currently reading? Is there like a book or a TV show you're really into right now?
That's actually funny. I am reading a lot lately. So I think I have 3 kinds of books I'm reading.
Yeah.
I'm reading books. So maybe this kind of answers your where do I see myself in 10 years question. But one of the things I've been reading about is engineering management books. There's like a lot of interesting things. I think that's something it's hard to learn actually, to like how to effectively manage, and it's also you want to be humanizing too. I feel one of the things that sometimes happens is you start to think in frameworks like 2x2s, and like or like above the line thinking, below the line thinking, or like all these poles, and
people.
You sometimes start to sound like a corporate caricature. You reach too much of them. But I think all these engineering management books say similar things in different ways, but maybe one of the ways will like resonate with you, and then they'll stick. So I'm reading those. I'm reading books about startups. That's like something that's interesting. I don't think it's honestly daunting when I've talked with people that like have worked in real startups, like started startups that are like 10 people. Like I think sometimes people and like they're like tiny and then they grow to like 100, 200, 500 people. Like, and when they started it, like there's maybe just like 4 founders. It's like very daunting, very scary, very unlike something I ever imagined. I did not think about. So I actually had a very anti-startup mindset in college, and I think I have more of. I think I just thought that startups were maybe I had like a more naive view, but I just thought that they were people that just like were very selfish. Was my stereotype of people who want to start. That basically they wanted credit, they wanted to be known, and they wanted control. And I think that was my view. But I realized that like actually people that work in startups, they don't control anything. Like they like have to like somehow like have like when you have like a company of so many people, they like put so much responsibility in like 100 employees, and they can't keep track of that stuff. And it's like a lot of trust and like service leadership is like kind of the mindset for that. And then I'm reading a lot of books about tennis. That's like my current phase right now. I'm reading bunch of that.
Yeah, I just got into tennis like near the beginning of quarantine. I started playing with a couple of my friends, and it's a lot more complicated than just hitting a ball over a net, which is what I thought it was at the beginning. There's a lot more strategy involved. So
Oh yeah, it's a head game. It's definitely
yeah, I did not realize that.
a lot of yeah. No, I played for 14 years before I went to college, and then I started picking up again.
Mm-hmm.
I like stopped in college.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. You said you started getting into cooking. What's your favorite dish / cuisine to cook and eat?
My friend makes fun of me. I make a lot of beef. I love beef. Apparently,
Yeah.
I always have like burgers. I'm not a. I could be better. I could have more vegetables. I have vegetables. I have lettuce on my burgers. It's not great. I could be healthier.
It's all good. It's all good. It's quarantine. No one's judging right now. All right. I'm. Oh, we have another question in the chat. Sean, have you played racquetball?
I have played racquetball before. Yeah, and squash. I prefer tennis. But yeah.
For tennis? Yeah. Yeah, that's right, Ansh. No one likes racquetball. All right. Yeah, Ansh and I have been talking about playing racquetball. We've been talking about it since we first met, and we've never actually done it. So yeah, he'll probably have something to say about it in the chat. All right.
I'm gonna throw a question back at you, Krush.
Okay.
What? So you're a rising junior, and I guess like when you start your junior year, that's when I would argue that the summer between your junior and senior year is one of the more important summers. They often, I can think of so many friends that like where they interned or where they did some research at, like is where they ended up going after.
Right.
What are you planning right now for next summer?
It's a good question because I'm still looking at options. So I guess it is a little bit early to think about recruiting, but I want to get more of like so I've been working in a robotics lab since freshman year. That's something that I also started looking into in college after I came to UT. That's something I've been looking more at like a potential either like a research field or a career. So just learning more about robotics and potentially working in some kind of robotics adjacent field next summer.
And I guess this is something you and I share, is that we both like robotics.
Yeah.
How do you get into robotics? Everyone has a different story, and like it's always interesting. There's some shared themes, but I'm interested in your story.
No, so mine actually isn't that romantic or that interesting. Mine was more, I was scrolling through YouTube, I guess, before freshman year, like that summer, as one does. And I ran into this like robotics conference in Japan. Don't ask me how it showed up on my feed, but it did. And it was a robot playing tennis, a robot playing ping pong, and a robot playing soccer, right? Just all kinds of sports. And the robot was just like going across doing that. That was kind of my first thing that, hey, robots can actually do something useful. I also watched the chess video where DeepMind beat Kasparov like a while ago, and that was kind of where I put the two things together, that robots can A, be intelligent, and B, they can apply their intelligence to things that I wouldn't have expected, like sports or something like that. Those are the two things that I kind of brought those together. And I got the opportunity to work in Andrea Tamaz, like you mentioned. I got the opportunity to work in her lab freshman year, so I jumped at it, and here I am right now. 2 years.
Oh, yeah, that's I think it's interesting that the two stories that you connect, because one is like when you think of chess playing, yeah, it's like there's like a long history of game playing AI to like the 1950s when they had that first like AI conference and they played checkers, and like and that was unembodied. And I guess like this is a little bit in like the philosophical implications. Like, does intelligence require a body?
Yeah.
And that's like if you ask roboticists, they're going to say yeah. Like if you ask like people who work in DeepMind on like AlphaGo, they'll say like, oh, embodiment is not necessarily required for like what constitutes an intelligence. There's like a whole Rodney Brooks essay on like embodied intelligence, which is I think that's like one of those core tenets that all robotics share, is like a theme that work in like AI and robotics at least.
One thing that I've been kind of getting into more recently is the more human aspect of robotics, which almost sounds like an oxymoron, but you kind of mentioned it earlier, how you wouldn't want a robot caring for a loved one, maybe like someone you care about. That's kind of the flip side, right? Because I know Andrea Tomas's her startup is working with robots in healthcare, specifically robots to aid nurses. And there's a very human aspect to that, to have the robot be as approachable, as friendly as possible. Just kind of have that, kind of not play against the nurse, but kind of help the nurse when they're trying to build empathy with the patient. So that's something I've been seeing as the future of robotics.
Yeah, one of the more frivolous human robot interaction things that I've thought is really clever is Katie Kwan. I think she's currently a postdoc at Stanford, or she might be a PhD student. But she is a trained dancer and also a mechanical engineer. And so her whole like body of work has been dancing with robots, like where you have synchronized robot dancing. I would recommend looking up Katie Kwan. It's like very, very cool. Kwan.
How do I spell her name?
Catie is Katie, and then Kwan is Cuan.
All right. Oh, Katie Kwan dance. That's
Exactly. Like
no, I'll look into these
yeah,
videos.
it's she has a bunch of very interesting talks,
Yeah.
and is just like a very energetic, fun person.
Yeah, this is also actually a really cool area because we're having a new postdoc come into the lab who also does a lot of stuff at the intersection of robotics and art, which I think is a really untapped kind of sphere where we haven't really thought of robots in a creative aspect as opposed to just like for like very functional uses.
Yeah, I actually find it very interesting when people like bridge two disciplines in general. Like Guy Hoffman.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he was like an animator by trade.
Yeah.
He went to do his PhD, and like he had a very animation centric view. I don't know, like it's very clever. And I even like Ed Catmull. You know Ed Catmull, like the Pixar founder.
Yeah.
He like has like he has a very interesting view of robotics. The word robot is a very triggering word to most people because when they hear robot, sometimes people default to like this like uncanny valley, like under threat automation, like they have like a very visceral negative reaction to the word robot. Like I sometimes it's like debatable like whether you want to call something a robot or not. Like I think when we call ourselves the Everyday Robot Project, and like that's like a choice to like explicitly like identify it as a robot instead of giving something like a name, or like when people say like self-driving cars, they're robots, and so is drone delivery is a robot. But like I guess your laundry machine is a robot in the same
sort of
way.
like a Sphero, like the little ball that you control with your phone. That's technically a robot.
Yeah, and people have different definitions. To some extent, I almost believe I hold a belief that for something to be a robot, it has to have some level of like autonomous, like. But then but then like you think of Mars rovers. Mars rovers are not autonomous. Like they're drivers. They have like, 2 drivers, and they have hundreds of scientists and stuff like all controlling it and deciding where they're going to go and what they're going to sample. And it's a robot. It's not autonomous.
Where do you draw the line, I guess?
Yeah, you don't really call it like a space remote control car, but like it is like a rover, a Mars rover.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right. I'm gonna let people keep dropping in questions in the chat. On Shandidi are talking about something. I'll just let them. I'll let people keep going into the chat. Sean, we talked again a lot about, I guess, the future of robotics. What do you think has been the most important thing? I guess again, it's hard to point to like one real thing, but like that helped make robots to the point where it is right now, kind of almost bursting into the mainstream.
All right. I mean, I'm gonna acknowledge like I have like some biases on like my recent history with robotics, and like I've only really worked in robotics after the deep learning. Like when I went to college in 2013, it's kind of the rise, and I think part of the timing of when I went to school like influences like my lens. But like there's I guess other historical like breakthroughs. Like honestly, Willow Barrage, like, and the invention of ROS is a huge breakthrough. Not like at any technical robotics level, but like as like a social breakthrough. Like that kind of changed everything. Where like a manipulation lab can focus on manipulation. Like they can make better manipulation ROS packages. And like then if they want to use navigation, there's a navigation lab that like has their own ROS package, and they are compatible and they can just talk with each other.
Yeah.
And that's really like one of the biggest like game changers in recent robotics, at least like as a framework that's like been so ubiquitous. Like so many companies like Cruise runs ROS, and like other companies have, I'm not sure if I can say like run ROS, like like it's very impressive like how you Amazon, like AWS RoboMaker, like they use ROS.
Yeah.
Like some companies make their own stuff too, but like ROS like definitely changed the game in terms. I guess there's a lot of access problems with robotics, like actually having a physical robot, but like core algorithms and like frameworks is not one of those now. Like simulators, like thanks to ROS and Gazebo and like all these like Move It and like OpenCV, like all these are like packages that like I don't know, democratize robotics. Now it's like crazy. Like you can pick a core algorithm like SLAM. SLAM also is like game changing as well. Like a visual SLAM in particular. Like that was Andy like Davidson's like whole like he invented monoslam, and he's like a legend in the field. And like but I think if I was going to pick one in like the past 20 years, I don't think there's anything bigger than ROS.
No, that was actually a really good answer to what was not a very good question. So thank you for that.
It was a fine question. It was good.
All right. If I don't think we have any other questions in the chat, so I'm going to end the live stream after this. Thank you for everyone who showed up, and for those of you watching after the fact, feel free to message me and Sean. He's actually in the Summer Hack Slack. He's one of our mentors. Feel free to message either one of us with any questions you might have about anything we've talked about. Hope everyone's staying safe, and we'll see you at our next talk.